and welcome to tonight's Citizens Police Review Board meeting for June 23rd, 2020. We have our panel who are present tonight, Mr. Green, Dr. Gershio, Ms. McClellan, Sister Patrice, and Mr. Williams is excused tonight. He's hoping to be able to join us later if he finishes his other commitment. Okay. Hopefully you all were able to review the minutes of the May 26th board meeting. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So move.
Second. Ms. McClellan, second. It has moved and properly seconded to accept the minutes. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes will be accepted as distributed. For tonight's meeting, our agenda will pretty much follow the outline that I'm going to indicate now. Our usual board business, our case reviews, and at the end of tonight's meeting, we will have public comments for 2 minutes. And we're going to ask Ms. Stephanie to help us to see what is in the comments section, since we're trying to do some multitasking here. So that will be very helpful for us. All right. For the chair's report, I do have comments that I would like to make tonight. And I'm asking you to just bear with me as I share these comments. We are experiencing 2 pandemics. One is health related, which is COVID-19, and the other is century-old embedded systems of racism. My hope is that a vaccine for coronavirus will be found very soon. As an alum of the Freedom Schools of the 1960s in Mississippi, an active participant in the civil rights movement of the 60s, and a social justice advocate until now, my goal has always been to fight for the constitutional rights of people of color. The death of George Floyd jettisoned to a new level the continuous blatant racist actions that take human lives unnecessarily. Mr. Floyd is only one of the many individuals of color who have died at the hands of law enforcement officers. I call out the name of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rashad Brooks, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and I call out Sandra Bland, even though she died while in jail. And this list can go on and on. With the most recent actions of law enforcement officers that led to the loss of lives, eyes and hearts have been opened to the continued ingrained, blind, and oppressive actions of individuals that have moved us to a higher level of consciousness. These recent actions by law enforcement have laid bare the deep-rooted structural violence in our society that continue to impact Black, Brown, Indigenous, queer, and poor lives. We have also witnessed dilemmas within our healthcare system that have caused individuals of color to be at odds. Our society has experienced collective grieving. Recent actions catapulted the Black Lives Matter Society and systemic racism to a national dialogue. There is now robust discussion about police reform versus police abolition. Reformist actions call for the defunding of police departments. This is a very serious platform that requires deep discussions. Additionally, is defunding or reforming law enforcement the real issue? Again, is defunding or reforming law enforcement the real issue? Can the structures and systems of policing be reformed, or do we have to reimagine communal perceptions of safety and security? That is a discussion that will have to continue. As we tackle deep-seated and critical issues that are buttressed by the racial overtones, the Citizens Police Review Board is fully cognizant of the need to understand the dynamics that push our citizens to file complaints with our board. We take each complaint of improper police conduct seriously, and we investigate it fully when required. I stress that as an independent body with subpoena power, we can represent the citizenry of Pittsburgh fully. As an investigative body, we are aware of the attitudinal differences that exist among law enforcement officers that should be changed. But I assure you, with our skilled investigators at the board, we are able to sort through the underlying dynamics that lead to and incite improper behavior. We are here to represent you, the citizens of Pittsburgh, and we realize that the racist systems leave their marks on individual and collective hearts, bodies, and minds. We advocate for anti-racist behavior at all levels in our society. Therefore, as the chairman of this board, I will move the pendulum of justice and seek to uproot and remedy the acts of violence that have supported racist systems in our society for far too long. And those are just comments that I wanted to share with the board tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Any comments from members of the board before we get into some of the other business of tonight?
I think, Madam Chair, you missed my comment, which I made visually.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I appreciate that. Okay, any other comments? All right, we will move on with the other business for tonight. We will get Ms. Pittinger's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members.
Good evening.
That was a very inspiring and profound statement, Dr. Darby. Thank you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the staff, I just want to convey how easy it is to work with the individuals on our board who share your perspective and that have at the very core of our mission the well-being and the common good in the city of Pittsburgh for everyone. And it's a privilege to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to pick up from your invitation to think about police reform in the context of our mission. And when you mentioned defund the police, I think what you were describing is consistent with the recognition that the so-called safety net is just all rotted out, and where we're trying to improve the conditions in the quality of life opportunity for everybody in our community. We have to look at that as, yes, we can probably move some funds somewhere, but there's also,
so if you live in private housing,
there's also the need that we have to hold providers of existing services accountable for redistribution of those resources to the communities in which those needs are apparent, and to survey to better understand and recognize where those needs may exist. Here we're talking about some of the diverting money from the Bureau of Police into neighborhood and community development and enhancement. And we talked about having support teams going out among the people and trying to provide the services that may be required. Dr. Darby, you yourself have developed and worked to create a curriculum to train social workers to work with police to support the needs of the community that are truly human needs, not police law enforcement needs.
Correct. Yes.
And your professed recognition, and all of us that have professed that, we recognize cops are not equipped to deal with the many, many complex issues that they are called and expected to deal with. And then we end up with people coming to us saying, you know, they were mistreated or there was an issue with the police conduct. They're simply not equipped to do it. And I think focusing on how do we put our energy towards truly creating a network and a support system within our community for everybody that's equitably funded. That is the intention of trying to enrich and enhance the front end so that some of the calls that go out that bring police into neighborhoods might be prevented. We talked about years ago when you had endorsed a proposal to the chief of police that involved neighborhood response teams or community response teams, whatever name, they're the same, where you have a law enforcement and specialist, either a public health specialist, a mental health professional, a housing professional, people who are equipped to deal with the common domestic issues that we encounter in our neighborhoods, and they can go and they can develop the links for people in need. They can support them in theirs, and the police can make their own contacts and relationships that help on the law enforcement end, but is not law enforcement focused. You also have provided recommendations to the state legislature related to reforms that would actually make a difference. Certainly some of our progressive representatives, their ideas have been well publicized, but some of the things that have been recommended, including amending the state municipal code that would require a police accountability plan to be incorporated in any and every community that's organized under the laws of Pennsylvania. That is talking about, you really do expect them to have a police accountability plan. And if they don't, then they are not going to be recipients of certain public funding coming from the state, that sort of thing. If we really mean what we say, the state legislature would be responding to some of these things. Licensing officers instead of certifying, and moving that process from the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission over to the Bureau of Professional and Occupational Affairs, where other occupations and professions are licensed, and there is oversight by the expertise that would be the appropriate peers to make the licensing recommendations or issue the licenses. Right now, that whole process for police officers is handled by MPO-ETC, which is administered by the Pennsylvania State Police, which means it is still completely law enforcement controlled. I think the community would like to see less law enforcement control and police control, and the involvement of civilian oversight and control to become more prominent. The personal liability that exists for police officers is nil right now. They are protected. They're protected in a variety of different ways. Probably the most obvious is their entitlement to qualified immunity, which leaves them off the hook on a personal level, but can still keep their employing jurisdiction liable for their actions. But until we start holding people accountable and individuals for their behavior, just like any other profession, think of it in terms of police malpractice insurance. They should hold the responsibility for their actions. The qualified immunity question is coming up to the Supreme Court again. Hopefully there will be some reasonable consideration and outcomes that may make a difference in that part of what is perceived to be an extreme shield for police accountability. The public access to body cam video, that is they're very closely held. And there are circumstances under which the public can obtain body cam video, but it's a bit of an onerous process. And it would be very, it would be appropriate for that to be released. I don't mean released, but that those rules be relaxed so that it is easier for the public and for the police to release body cam video, especially in moments of when there's a critical incident that can help reduce the tensions resulting from an incident, because the video would be available to the public view. The mayor and the governor came out around the same time with their ideas about some police reform measures. The governor has indicated that his intention that he wishes to develop a citizen oversight process for the Pennsylvania State Police and possibly the Department of Corrections. That's a step in the right direction. And in that memorandum, he also emphasized the importance of having civilian oversight and citizen police review boards. He indicated if you don't have one, create one. And if you do have one, assure that it is well resourced and properly staffed. Hopefully, we will be able to benefit from this public policy priority. At the same time, Mayor Peduto made a couple of, he created an Office of Community Wellness, but also he created a task force that is made up of 17 individuals from a wide spread of the community. Some are residents of the city, some are not. You have a variety of academic interests. You have a variety of occupational activist interests. So there's a great deal of diversity in experience and knowledge on that task force. He has charged them with conducting a review of pretty much whatever they think would be appropriate to look at and make recommendations on towards reforming or improving the way policing is performed and received in the city of Pittsburgh. No one from this board was appointed to that. I think in many ways we will be able to draw from their recommendations some sense of where we could be going in terms of what your priorities might be for the future based on whatever work they do. And I think it might also be validating to the work that you have done over the years, because you have made a big difference in how police policies are written and implemented, the relationship between the community and the police, not forgetting that the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police was involved in a number of innovative training projects in the last 5 years, and that they have assimilated that into their training curriculum as well as their practice, their street practice. It's a different world than it was just 5 or 10 years ago. I would also remind everybody that when we speak in terms of the reforms and a shift towards meeting the human needs, we have in the Allegheny County, we have a Department of Human Services. They provide all the services that a community normally requires. And I think I have not heard much discussion about integrating or including and involving and pulling some of those resources back into the city of Pittsburgh from the county human service department. They are responsible for the providing mental health services, behavioral health, children and youth services, everything that involves the social service needs of a community is housed in the county human service department. And I would like to see us being able, maybe that's something we could do, but to involve them because the system is already in existence. It makes little sense to try to replicate that system of support in the city of Pittsburgh when everybody who lives in the city of Pittsburgh has access to those services and are in fact entitled to it. So I'd like to see more of that, but as of right now, there are several efforts that the mayor has undertaken that everything takes a little bit of time, but hopefully they will have some positive outcomes. If I may, Madam Chair, I'd like to give you a quick update on where we are with the investigation into the June 1st incident that Mayor Peduto had also reached out and asked if we would be able to conduct our own investigation.
Yes, I wanted to ask the question about that. Since the board has not discussed it previously, should that be under new business?
Sure.
I was thinking that was new business. That's where I had it on my agenda.
Would you like me to wait and discuss where we are with that?
Under new business,
then?
because that is new business.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay,
that's fine. I believe you also received a summary of the status of that investigation in your board packet also.
we did.
Yes,
did.
good. I think that's probably, well, for intake, we have 140 complaints received to date, which is very low compared to past performance, past years. That could be indicative of a lot of different variables, so we won't speculate on that. Mr. Burgess, Councilman Burgess today introduced a measure in council that proposes to amend the home rule charter through referendum to do two things. To require all police officers to cooperate with the CPRB's investigations. And if they fail to do so, then they would be subjected to discipline up to and including termination. The second item on that referendum, or intention of the referendum, is to require the chief of police to wait until the board has weighed in on a matter before it and before the chief, be it a complaint, a single individual complaint of misconduct, or whatever matter you may be considering that the chief is also considering, that the chief has to wait from taking final disposition action until you have weighed in. You will recall that a few years ago, there was an effort to amend the city code to require just that the chief would have to wait for you. That did not pass in council. This seems to have the same intention behind it, but as a component of a referendum. His intention is to give you more power. And I believe, as far as my information to you, with the exception of the status of the investigation to the June 1st incident, that completes my report, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So Councilman Burgess presented that today. It has to go through the process to see if it can be put on the ballot for the November election. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you can keep us informed of how it moves through the process and whether or not that will appear.
Will do.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Ms. Pittinger? If not, we'll move to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Mr. Waters. He needs to be unmuted.
I did.
Unmute.
All right. Thank you. I want to thank.
1 second, Sister Patrice.
Yes.
1 second. Mr. Waters, and then you, Sister Patrice.
I have a motion I'd like to raise under unfinished business. We have a case that has been sitting untouched, uncompleted for a while. It is number 17317, Rutzel versus Schweitzer. And my motion is, and I'll read it, I move that the panel for this case, Karen McClellan, Thomas Waters, and Mary Jo Gariccio, meet virtually via Zoom within 10 days to review the findings. Within 3 days of our meeting, provide those findings and any associated notes to the executive director so that a final report can be generated and shared among the panel. Then the panel can approve the final report, and with 3 days of receipt of that, so that the report can then be issued publicly at the next board meeting. I want to apologize personally that I have not raised this as unfinished business in the past. I think it is just something that has gotten overlooked, but I think our protocol is that when we have a public hearing, a panel looks at the findings, makes some decisions, and there is a final report. And I think we'd be remiss if we allow this to go on.
Okay, can I get a second on that so we can have discussion? May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. McClellan. All in favor? Aye. I'm sorry.
No, not
We can
yet.
have the discussion. We can have the discussion now. Is there additional discussion on that motion? Ms. McClellan?
I'm sorry, Thomas. I thought that had already been resolved.
I don't think it has. We've never officially released a report. It's not posted on the website. So I think we just have ends we need to tie up.
Okay, sounds good.
That's fine. Yeah, because I thought we had done most of that work.
Yeah, I thought it was done too. Okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I think everyone is on the same track to want to finish it.
Yeah.
That the majority of your work has been done, and it's just a matter of concluding what you've already started. So all in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. And I would just like to say that if the panel just reviews what is there, submit the formal recommendations to Ms. Pittenger, and we can move forward from there.
Madam Chair, those findings and recommendations were circulated some time ago. So it's just a matter of securing signatures from the panel members and
Okay,
that it's been completed.
okay, all right. So we'll follow through to make sure that we close the findings on that review that the panel conducted. Thank you.
You're welcome.
question.
Okay, anything else? Yes, Ms. McClellan.
Ms. Pittenger, are we able to, or are you able to accept our date stamped email as approved signature?
Yes, we could do that.
Okay.
Do you guys have DocuSign or Adobe Signature or anything that we can?
If we review all of the paperwork, if we review the findings and are in agreement, when we send back the email that says, I agree with this and want this to go forward, that would be sufficient. Because it would be a date and time stamped email that gave our approval.
Okay.
We have done that in the past where a member was not available, but the approval was made in that manner. And we noted that on the other two members signed off, but we noted the third panel members confirmation and agreement, date and time.
Okay.
Yep. we can
All
do
right. Well, I think we can bring that to closure based on what we've discussed here this evening. Sister Patrice?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Ms. Pittenger for sending us that press release on the mayor. I was very happy to learn all of the action that he's proposing, and it looks like he wants us to stay around and work also. So I was really happy to read that, to be, knowing what is the extent of his support, not only for this board, but for what is best for the city, and with respect to all the various publics that help shape that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? If not, we'll move on to new business. And at this point, we will discuss the mayor's recommendation to us via a letter regarding us to investigate the actions that took place on June 1st. So will you give us an update, Ms. Pittenger?
I'm happy to. You did receive a summary in your packet for tonight's meeting on that, where we stood and where we were going forward. We're focusing on 5 particular policies and procedures. And that is the use of force, the continuum of control, discharge of firearms and less lethal weapons, the use and deployment of SWAT and the special response team in relationship to the incidents that transpired from May 31st or 30th, 31st through and including June 1st, because those were the most critical times where there were incidents that involved an enforcement action and a couple of controversial confrontations between civilians, protesters, and police officers. You're aware I had sought the assistance of a professional group known as the Densis Group for the purpose of providing essentially a forensic assessment, a peer review of the conduct that we did see and that has been raised in question related to Pittsburgh Bureau of Police actions, particularly on June 1st. But beginning with the first day when we did have some property destruction, et cetera, where there was some heavy police interventions, mostly with hostile individuals seeking to disrupt protests. But nonetheless, the practice, the technique that they used, we were seeking an outside professional assessment of that to provide an after action report that would then inform our report. You know, there's a lot to be said for having a professional expertise, a credible report from people who do what they do. And you're looking to assess that kind of action, being maintaining public order, the use of less lethal weapons, crowd management, interventions in situations that involve protests, but that sometimes are corrupted by other people, people who have a broader view. I sought an outside third party because we have a large issue across the country related to law enforcement and engagement with civilians, particularly protesters. I sought a view that would be broader, more comprehensive, would still has the law enforcement, the background, the expertise to be able to assess the use of force that was deployed, the training that went into it that led to the manner in which the conflicts were dealt with, who escalated what, when, and where, a view that would help inform us. We have competent, capable law enforcement professionals on our board. They are quite capable in their own right to evaluate that kind of an objective report submitted to us for the purposes of informing our outcome, our final report. It would not be appropriate to expect that our own members would go out and conduct the investigation with their law enforcement background and come back and then render a decision over what they found. So it seems that it would be important to have that third party unrelated view from a credible source that is what they do. They develop alternative ways of dealing with potentially conflicted situations, but to use the least amount of force necessary to remain within the bounds of the Constitution and laws, and to minimize the intrusion and disruption caused by police officers trying to control a situation. Their general philosophy is to move from the street warrior to the guardian that protects the exercise of rights and does not infringe upon those rights, but does protect the people exercising their rights. That's the densest group. I've sent to you all a letter that the chairman of the board did send to Councilwoman Gross in an effort to further explain their philosophy and their background. I think it was a fairly articulate explanation as to why we were looking at that group to assist us in this investigation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pittenger. The board had information on several occasions regarding DENSIS. And I know many of us have gone to the DENSIS website and have explored who they are to have more knowledge about that organization. In order for us to consider it as a board tonight, I would like to have discussion, if you have any questions at all about the DENSIS group, and at a later point, we will need to have a motion to determine what action the board will recommend to Ms. Pittenger. Mr. Waters.
Actually, we need a motion before we can have a discussion.
Okay, all right. I do have it backwards, don't I? Yeah. So may I have a motion to accept the recommendation of Ms. Pittenger regarding the DENSIS group?
So move.
Okay, Sister Patrice, a second?
A second.
Ms. McClellan seconded. Okay, is there any discussion? Ms. McClellan. can't hear you. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Okay, there you go.
I think from past experience that the dentist group has proved itself over and over again. I think they would be a valuable tool in our kit to work with.
One of the things that I want our report to reflect is evidence-based practices and analysis that they will bring to the table. There are some, I think a discussion, if this moves forward, I think a discussion of the board and dentists is in order so that we can all be on the same wavelength. At this point, we'll continue with discussion from the board. Are there any comments from members of the board? Mr. Waters? Mr. Waters?
I was originally yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was originally quite opposed to this idea of the dentist group. I have put a lot of time and energy and thought into it. And I understand and acknowledge and support the use of a third-party entity to assist in the investigation. I see value there. I think if we move forward with the dentist group, however, we need a very limited and distinct idea about what their role is, what they're providing for us, and what they are not. In my opinion, one of the major problems with the dentist group is I do not believe that they will have and receive the kind of trust they need from the community to get the community's side of the story. And so I fear that while they are and can be very talented at their investigation, I worry that people won't talk to them because their website does display them as very pro-force, pro-government, pro-control, pro-police. And that may be a shortfall of their marketing materials, but regardless, I think that's a problem that the community may not trust them. I spoke with as many people in the community over the past week as I could, and I heard over and over again, dentists, where do I remember that name? Oh yeah, G20. They didn't help us. They weren't good for the community. So I just worry that they're, as a group, regardless of how qualified they are, we will have difficulty getting a good full evaluation because of them. I also think that while I really believe they can do a great job at helping to lay out what happened, who did what and when, all those details, things we really need to understand in a very minute way. And that would seem to me to be the great value of utilizing a group like that. I'm not really interested in their recommendations for how to move forward. That I'm not sure that I trust. So I really value the idea of a third-party group. I can see that dentists could provide us with some things, but I think that should be limited to an investigation and a thorough review and write-up of exactly what happened so that that can aid us in us making recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and that's part of what I was saying when we need to have a meeting with dentists if indeed they are approved by City Council. So thank you for amplifying my thoughts. Dr. Gershio.
When I was reviewing the website, who were the owners of dentists? Does anybody know?
Ms. Pittinger?
Yeah, the chairman of the board is Sam Rosenfeld. And they're a limited group, but it's a private interest.
And we don't know who the
Yeah, I
owners.
do. I know who they are. I know who they are. I mean, I know who their board members are. I mean,
Okay.
we know that, but
Is Is it a diverse group of people?
Yes, and their diversity varies based on the scope of work they're engaged in. They have racial diversity, they have activism diversity, and they have technical diversity. Technical meaning, are they looking at a military situation, a domestic law enforcement in America, or a country, an undeveloped country trying to protect an election? It varies on what their task is. And they've been very clear that anything they did for us would be very limited. To Mr. Waters' concern, it's very limited, and it is for the purpose of informing you, not for the purpose of providing the ultimate report to the community.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
uh, I think the use of an objective party is very credible. But remember that we make the recommendation. They do the findings, but the wording of the recommendations that will come from this board, we take the findings. I think I've done a lot of programs have worked with teams. And again, it's up to the recipient to determine the best way to put those recommendations forth. So I'm very comfortable as I read about their past experience. I think it's a good choice for us, knowing that ultimately the task is ours.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Waters?
Madam Chair, I think I just want to acknowledge that we're probably all seeing that there's a variety of comments coming in. And so I just want the commenters to know that we are noticing that. And at the end of our meeting, there is usually a period for public comment. However, I would agree with some of what I've read, that I believe as a board member, I would feel more comfortable if I could know more about the diversity of the board in terms of racial, of the densest group, in terms of racial diversity, LGBTQ representation within the densest group, not just what they've done, but who they are. That would be useful data, I think, to help me understand this organization that we would be working with.
I will have to ask Ms. Pittenger, is that information available now? And if not, I would ask that she is maybe able to get it for us. But if we can move forward with what the motion is on the table, and that information be provided to us. Do you have it now, Ms. Pittenger?
No, I do not.
Okay, so we will have to get that information and provide it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Are you ready for the vote?
Yes.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, I'm not sure where we are. I think we are going to have a roll call here. Dr. Gershio? Aye. Okay, Ms. McClellan?
Aye.
Mr. Green? Oh, aye. Okay, Sister Patrice?
Aye.
Okay, and we have one no, Mr. Waters. So that's 4 yes, 1 no. Okay.
The motion passed.
The motion passes. Ms. Pitteger, will you share that information so it can go before City Council on Wednesday?
I certainly shall. It will be addressed with council tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And with respect to that, members, this becomes a little bit of an awkward thing, but it's your independence that is guiding that decision. And I just in advance want you to know that that is my messaging. That while council, we need their authorization and the already identified transfer of funds to allow us to work up into whatever we need to do. Substituting council's judgment for yours is something that I would certainly push back on.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, we will move on now to the case review. Mr. Waters.
Another item of new business. We have mentioned the mayor's letter to us, but there has been no real discussion of what the mayor did ask for us to do. I move that we organize a public Zoom meeting and that meeting include the NAACP, the ACLU, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Those were the things, the groups that the mayor asked us to work with. I see that as separate from the need for the investigation that we have voted now to approve. But I move that we organize a public meeting with these organizations that we were asked to meet with.
I believe that some meetings have taken place, Mr. Waters. Am I correct, Ms. Pittinger?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I'm still asking for a public meeting between us, the board, and those groups.
I think a first step, Mr. Waters, would be for us to meet with the groups so that we can have their opinion and their input in terms of how we communicate with the public. So I'm wondering if a first step is to meet with the groups and then determine what is the best process for engaging the public. The public should be involved, but we need to have input from the other organizations as to what the strategy will be.
Madam Chair, I've made a motion, and with all due respect, it now asks for a second. If it doesn't receive a second, then there's no reason to go forward.
Okay.
But I'd like it to be public that the board either doesn't second it or votes against it or whatever. So a motion has been placed. The proper step is to ask for a second.
And I agree with you, and I'll make comments later. May I have a second on the motion, please? A second on the motion? A second on,
I second the motion.
Mr. Green seconds the motion.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself.
Pardon me?
I said, I keep forgetting to unmute myself.
Oh, okay. All right. The motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion? And the discussion is basically what I've said before, that there have been some discussions and that we need to involve everyone. My position is that we need to involve everyone so that everyone can have an input on exactly what the strategy will be for moving forward. Dr. Gershio.
I would amend his motion to include that we first meet as the board with those groups, and then because we have to have transparency, but I think that you're right, some of the discussions have to happen prior.
Mr. Waters, are you willing to accept a friendly amendment to your motion?
Madam Chair, I probably am. I guess I would like a greater clarification that when Dr. Gershio says the board meet with the organizations, does she mean the board, meaning the 7 of us, or does she mean the staff of the CPRB? Thank you.
I would be fine with the representation of the board along with the executive director, because I don't know if everybody can be available, but for those who can, I see no problem.
Then I would accept that friendly amendment that representatives from the board, 1 or more of us, will be asked to participate in meetings with these organizations. And we will do all of that before we would decide about having a public meeting. Is that consistent with your amendment? I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
So the friendly addition to the motion is that one or more representatives from the board will meet with the other organizations prior to really to determine what the next steps will be regarding involving the public.
And again, I think that the executive director or her designee should also be there.
Totally. Yep.
For transparency and for everything, I would think that the executive director or her designee be in those meetings.
Yes, totally.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
didn't the mayor ask us to meet with those groups?
yes, yes, that's in his letter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this public meeting is a different motion.
Well, you're right about that, because the mayor's letter indicates that we will work with those 4 groups.
Mhm.
And yeah, whether or not it's how the group decides to involve the public is a matter for that group to determine how to move forward. So I think the best thing to do now, we have the motion on the floor, vote it up or down, and then we move forward from there. So all in favor of the motion to meet with representatives from the CPRB and the individuals who were identified in the mayor's letter, and then determine what next steps would be for involving the public.
Question before the vote.
Okay, question?
Ms. Pittinger, has the process already started with the meetings with those groups?
Yes. I
Okay.
met with the state NAACP. We had a good meeting. We're going to follow up again. And the nature of that was whether or not, or how they wanted to support our going forward with the investigation. Now, remember, we have a couple of issues here. One of which is an investigation is confidential until it's concluded and you've issued your findings in a report. Having a public meeting, I think, would be very good for the fact-finding side of this. And you could include those parties for the feedback or for the contribution to your report, to take testimony from the ACLU, from the NAACP. The U.S. Attorney's Office is not going to work with us. I think Mr. Ward explained that in the past. If there's going to be a civil rights issue, a civil rights violation issue that's criminal in nature, they're not going to even talk to us about it. But with the ACLU, Mr. Walczak is in trial prep, so he's not available. And the local attorney we've worked with has not responded to me yet. But having that public meeting, I'm not sure, when you say a strategy, I'm not sure what you're thinking about in terms of a strategy of going forward. We already have an investigation underway. We are hopeful that we'll be able to get this, the expertise, the experts in and do that post haste very quickly, so that when it comes back within the next week or so, if this goes forward with council, then you'll be ready to hold a public hearing to take the input from the community at large.
Mr. Waters?
Yes, I want to try to clarify what I'm saying. The mayor asked us to work with 3 other entities. One of those entities may be impossible for us to actually work with because of the legal situations that could occur, the U.S. Attorney's Office. I am not comfortable with us moving forward with our investigation and simply calling the ACLU or the NAACP to give testimony at our public hearing. That's not really us working with these other groups. And so I would like to stick to the motion, which includes, because of a friendly amendment, that members of this board, along with CPRB staff, will have meetings with these other organizations so that then we can make a choice about how we as a group of organizations will proceed. And I think that that is in addition to our own investigation. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Waters, frankly, I need some clarification. While those meetings would be taking place, if we get approval to move forward with the investigation, that investigation would be separate from the meeting of the organizations to talk about additional strategies. I'm looking at the time element here. June 1st was when the incident happened. We have to go through the legislative process right now, set up a meeting, and I'm getting a little concerned for the time factor that may be involved. If you're talking about things moving simultaneously, then we can keep things on track.
Yes, simultaneously.
Okay.
Simultaneously.
Okay. Dr. Gershio.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor this, but isn't it Ms. Pittinger's responsibility to do that, to meet with them? And then if there were issues or concerns that she would bring them to us? I guess I'm getting, it's getting a little cloudy to me.
Okay. Mr. Green.
While Ms. Pittinger, in most circumstances, I think represents us collectively quite well and capably. In this particular instance, I feel like at least a couple of actual board members ought to be present in the meeting, so that we can interact directly with the folks from the NAACP and the ACLU. I think at this juncture, what's needed is a level of conversation between board members and members of those groups that produces a real collaboration.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Mr. Waters.
The mayor specifically asked the CPRB to do this. And while Ms. Pittinger is an excellent executive director and we have highly qualified staff, we, 7 of us, are the CPRB. And therefore, that's why I believe we as board members need to participate in this process, just as Mr. Green just articulated so well.
Okay, I just want to make you aware that the NAACP contacted me. So they did talk to me as well and gave me some input on their position. So I'm one board member, but they did seek me out. Okay. All right, so at this point, we need to take a vote on the motion that's on the floor. And are we clear on what that motion is, first of all? Let me see if I can recap the motion.
Yeah, because it got real cloudy for me after we.
I know.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Stephanie, are you taking minutes? Is Stephanie taking minutes?
I am taking notes, but I missed, I mean, it did get clouded like Dr. Gershio said.
Okay, let's see if we can reconstruct it. Mr. Waters, since you made the motion, you may have your original motion written. So can you inject what Dr. Gershio said?
Yes, please give me 1 second here. Okay, this is the revised motion. It's probably not as eloquent as it ought to be. I move that the CPRB actively work in conjunction with the NAACP, the ACLU, and if possible, the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we will do that by having board members of the CPRB active participants in meetings with these other organizations so that these organizations together can decide about next steps, such as a public meeting.
All right, are you clear?
Don't
Ms.
forget to
McLeod?
include staff members.
Yes, the meetings will include the executive director and staff. Yes, thank you very
Great.
much, Ms. McLeod.
All right, so now that we have the motion, may I call for the vote? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5. Okay, we have 5 ayes, and that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All
Madam
right.
Chair, may I address you guys, the board?
Yes.
So are you, with this motion and having meetings with these groups? I remind you that it is you are conducting an independent investigation. The engagement or collaboration on general affairs, is that what you're hoping to do with this motion to meet with the ACLU and the NAACP? Because they are not privy to your investigation until such time as you've completed it.
Right.
And yet their impression and their guidance is what, along the way I'm trying to get. But a collaborative effort on an outcome of the investigation is a little bit, not sure how we do that, but I think that all of you meeting together, we have reached out to them for guidance in the investigation. What would they like to see us doing or not doing? And then we have the other side of it, which is, do you want to have a public hearing to take comment about the incident under investigation? Or are you contemplating a public hearing or a public meeting with ACLU and NAACP for just to share the common goals that you all share?
I had the understanding of the former statement that you just made, so that we can have a communication process established. And we are all understanding exactly what we are going to do as the investigative body who is actually conducting the investigation. So that was my understanding of what was involved in that motion. Not that they would be privy to what we're actually doing and inside information, so to speak, but that we have a communication pattern established. Mr. Waters.
And the mayor's request of us specifically asked for these groups to make recommendations. Now, the CPRB has a role in making recommendations based upon our investigation, but these organizations together can work together to make maybe more broad recommendations, and each entity, each organization may be having their own work. We do investigation, maybe they do other kinds of things. For me, the real goal is that the board is working with these other groups to be able to meet the mayor's full request. And I do not see this as interfering with our investigation or sharing our investigation. And it's not a part of our investigation. It is a request that's about groups being asked to work together.
I can share with you, based on my conversations with the NAACP, that their view is that they want us to know that they are supporting the steps that we're taking. Yeah. And they've communicated that very clearly to us. We can certainly, make sure that we get the input from the ACLU, but that we're the major group who will move forward with the full investigation. So the meeting will just reiterate what they've already said, what the NAACP has said to us in that regard. Right. But since we have approved this motion, we can make sure that that collaboration of conversations, let me put it that way, not collaboration, but conversations have taken place amongst the bodies, and that we have a common agreement of where they see the CPRB doing the work. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. I had a better sense now. I thought we
Okay.
were setting, I wasn't sure if we were doing two things or one thing collaboratively. I just, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, very good. All right, anything else under new business? Mr. Waters?
I'm so sorry, but I do have another motion. I'm gonna copy and paste it into the chat window, hopefully. And I'll read it now. I move that until the board decides otherwise, social media for the CPRB on Twitter and Facebook be limited to posting meeting announcements, reports of our findings, and the live streaming of all public meetings. On Twitter, we should post daily the date and time of the upcoming meeting.
Okay, I move that until the board decides on social media for the CPRB be limited. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. May I have a second?
Could I ask that it be, I'd like to read it again. I'm not quite sure I had time for that.
Okay, you can pull it up in your chat too. So, Mr. Waters, will you repeat the motion?
Yes, I move that until the board decides otherwise, social media for the CPRB on Twitter and Facebook be limited to posting meeting announcements, reports of our findings, and the live streaming of all public meetings. On Twitter, we should post daily the date and time of the upcoming meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly seconded. Discussions. I have a concern, and that is that you want us to post daily on Twitter.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Can I
Madam
address that?
Chair. I don't want to be out of order here, but we have been suspended on Twitter since April
Oh,
for
okay.
reasons unknown to us. And so you
I
can,
removed Twitter from my motion.
Okay. All right, so the motion is amended to delete on Twitter. All right, Mr. Green.
Well, actually, I think Ms. McClellan has been holding on for about 20 minutes now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Ms. McClellan. You have to raise your hand higher.
One of my concerns is the CPRB passes on quite useful information in the form of articles and things of that nature that have nothing to do with our investigation. It is community information that needs to be out there. And I feel that if we hamper that process of informing the public of the articles that are pertinent, then we're doing the community a disservice.
Thank you, Ms. McClellan. Dr. Gershio,
Louder.
unmute yourself.
Did I do it?
Yes, you're
All right.
unmuted.
I was just going to reiterate what Karen was saying is I thought that part of our job was to inform, we're part of the community. I mean, we represent and get information out to others that is pertinent. So I'm confused by Mr. Waters' statement about we can only post dates and times of our meetings.
Okay, Mr. Green, did you have a comment?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
please,
all right,
Waters.
Mr. Waters.
Yes, I want to stipulate that this is what it says on our website. The purpose of the Citizens Police Review Board is to receive, investigate, and recommend appropriate action on complaints regarding police misconduct and to improve the relationship between the police department and the community. In my opinion, a series of recent posts are doing the exact opposite of that. And therefore, I'm not just saying we post dates and times. You look at my motion, I say that we post meeting announcements, reports of our findings, and live streaming of all our public meetings. those things are consistent with what our purpose is, which is to receive complaints, investigate, and recommend appropriate action of those complaints.
Okay, I understand exactly the point you're trying to make, and I believe that we have an obligation to keep the community informed of relevant issues that impact on the decisions that the board makes. And sometimes those stories can make a difference with the connection that we have to the community. I would hate that we could not continue to do that.
I think the board could decide at another time to change this. That's why my motion clearly says to suspend until the board decides otherwise. But I think in today's very challenging climate, this is a good step to improve police community relations.
Okay. All right. The motion was seconded, correct? I'm lost. Okay, so now I call for the vote. All in favor of this motion. Stephanie,
I didn't see who seconded it.
Mr.
that's
Green.
why I'm confused. Who did
Yeah,
second
I
it?
didn't see it.
Who seconded? Who seconded?
Oh,
I probably
Mr.
did
Patrice.
have that.
Oh, Sister Patrice seconded it. Okay, all in favor of this motion, aye.
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 All opposed? Ms. McClellan, Dr. Gershio, Sister Patrice, what is your vote?
Nay.
Okay, so 3 nay, 2 in favor. The motion fails. All right, any other new business? Okay, we will move to the case reviews for tonight. And these are recommendations we have from our investigators. We have no public hearings scheduled. We have 1 full investigation. It is case number 107-20 to authorize full investigation. And this is in regards to the June 1st incident that took place. May I have a motion to accept the full investigation? Ms. McClellan, second. Dr. Gershio, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. We have no 30-day full extensions. We have no out of jurisdictions. We have 2 sustainable cases, case number 18819 and case 6019, to dismiss as unsustainable. May I have a motion to dismiss those 2 cases? Dr. Sister Patrice, second. Ms. McClellan, all in favor, aye.
I have discussion, Madam Chair.
Okay, let me back up here. Discussion, Mr. Waters.
Case number 18819. As I read this case, I really have difficulty knowing how to move forward on it. I can't really say that I think it should go to a public hearing, but I do not also believe that it should be simply dismissed as unsustained. I would ask that we do not consider this case to dismiss unsustained, but to suspend it and allow board members to more deeply dig into the investigation from our investigators.
Let me get clear.
Dr. Gershio, go ahead.
I thought that if we found something unsustainable, that we allowed at a public hearing, if someone wanted to speak on that they still had that.
No, we dismiss it as unsustainable. This one is to dismiss it as unsustainable. The question I have on this one is that the letter was anonymous.
Mhm.
And it's a charge being made that no one is willing to stand behind, which is somewhat problematic.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And it's part of what leads me to really feel conflicted about what to do. And that's why I would ask that we suspend this case and allow board members to dig deeper into the investigation to better understand it.
Ms. McClellan.
Is the investigator on here?
Yes.
Okay. Can we hear from the investigator?
Stephanie, can you find her? Oh, I'm in the wrong list. I apologize, everybody.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, there she is.
Okay. I spoke with the subject officer because the letter accused him. I mean, it blatantly said that he was a homophobe. He said that he didn't know anything about that. He said his problem with the pastor was that he was sending unwarranted text messages to his sergeant. I guess she felt uncomfortable. The text messages were only, they were daily blessings. But she never spoke up and told the pastor not to send them, but they made her feel uncomfortable because she was receiving them at all hours of the night, day and night. She did speak, so the lieutenant, there were also scheduled conflicts with the chaplains and the recruits. So a letter was sent, an email was sent to, I believe, the commander or assistant chiefs because there were scheduling conflicts. The sergeant who was receiving the text, she also spoke with the chaplain liaison and the liaison sergeant, but nothing was ever done. And it doesn't appear that anybody else was offended by the text. So, but a special was never written. And in the Bureau, whenever there's a problem, everyone writes a special and they send it up the chain of command so that it's signed off on. And that way a problem is addressed. But there was never anything put on paper. Everything was word of mouth.
So there was an unwillingness to document the concern.
Yes, the sergeant, she kept receiving these, they were daily blessings. I asked her, were they sexual harassment? Was it harassment in nature? She said it was just daily blessings, but she didn't want to say anything. She didn't want to offend the chaplain, but the text messages were coming at like 5 a.m. and even as late as like 11 p.m. at night. She was off on maternity leave at that point at home. So she just didn't want the text messages, but she never told the chaplain that she didn't want the text. So I actually spoke to the chaplain and I asked him, did he have a problem while he was at the academy? And he wouldn't say that he laughed it off and he said that everything was okay. So he never alleged that there was any type of problem either.
I guess my concern now is what will we investigate?
Nothing.
I'm not sure that there's anything there to investigate based on what Sherry has just told us.
I'm not asking for us to investigate further. I am asking for board members to have more time to look at the investigation. The chaplain piece of this seems to me to be a small point, a small part of the entire complaint. And I am fine with the chaplain piece of this, but I'm more concerned about some of the other pieces of this. And I think it's really problematic that we get an anonymous letter. I wholly agree with that. And I hope that in this public forum, with as many people as we have watching, if anyone knows anybody about who filed this complaint, that they would come forward to allow us to better understand. But I wasn't really concerned about the concerns about homophobia and transphobia. And I don't know that we can make a final judgment about it, but I'm simply asking for a suspense so that board members can dig and understand the investigation better.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we separate these two cases. Oh, Ms. McClellan.
One last statement. I will try to make this very quick, very brief. We have no victim. We have no one that is willing to complain about anything. No matter who it is, what time it is, they're not willing to commit to a complaint. There is nothing for us to look into at this point. Hopefully in the future, if something else happens, a complaint will be filed, but right now we have nothing.
I'm going to separate them out and we'll vote on them separately, okay? So for case number 18819, may I have a motion to dismiss as unsustainable?
So moved.
Motion.
It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
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 3 ayes, 4 ayes. No,
No,
no, Mr. Waters. Okay, this case is dismissed as unsustainable. We'll now take case 6019. May I have a motion to dismiss this as unsustainable? Ms. McClellan moved and Sister Patrice seconded. All in favor of dismissing case 6019. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Gershio?
there's a hand raised.
Unmute yourself.
That was a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so all in favor, aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Okay, no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. We'll move now to unfounded. We have 2 cases that are unfounded, case number 9820 and case 5820. May I have a motion to dismiss these 2 cases as unfounded? Ms. McClellan moved. A second. Dr. Gershio, all in favor, aye.
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 Oppose? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Okay, we have 1 case that is other, and this case is dismissed because it has been resolved, and that's case 20619. May I please have a motion for this case to dismiss it as resolved? Ms. McClellan, a second. All in favor, Dr. Gershio, a second. All in favor, aye.
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 Oppose? The ayes have it, the motion carries.
It's nice to see something resolved.
It is, it really is. Before it goes any further, I agree. Okay. We have new suspensions. We have 5 new suspensions. And this is a means of us being updated. So we're going to suspend them until the July meeting. They are case number 23019, 21719, 0320, 5819, and 25819. No, 5819. So is it 4 or 5 cases, Stephanie?
4.
Okay, 4, not 5.
Sorry
Okay,
about
because
that.
of
I'll
the
correct it.
duplication. Okay, so it's 4 cases for new suspensions. Again, 23019, 21719, 320, and 5819. May I have a motion to suspend those 4 cases?
So motion.
I second.
Okay, and Mr. Green
Question.
seconded. Sister
No,
Patrice.
actually, I have a question.
Oh, you have a question?
are-
Okay,
are
Mr.
we-
Green.
Did we already deal with 6220?
6220. Under which heading, Mr. Green?
Suspensions.
New suspensions? I don't have a 6220 under new suspensions.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that the one that we just did?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Okay, all right. So are you seconding?
Yes,
two?
yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Okay, thank you very much for those case reviews. We're down to announcements. The next regular meeting will be on July 28th. And unless things change, it may be a Zoom meeting as well. At this time, we will have public comments, and I know that we've had some chats and some questions along the way. So I'm going to ask Stephanie to read. Do we have anyone who indicated that they want public comment aside from a question, Stephanie?
There's a lot of questions in the chat room, and there's a question in the Q&A for the densest group. Which one do you want me to start with?
Okay, just start.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into the densest group question, and I'm not gonna give the party's name, correct?
No, just a question.
Okay, so the first question is to Ms. Pittenger, and they want her to clarify the commentary about bad apples in the community that she made to KDKA regarding the June 1st incident. Specifically, the statement, "Our officers stayed back. They have also allowed protests and demonstrations. They protect those demonstrators. They let it go to the point where the line is crossed and criminal behavior engages. Because as a member of the community, that felt an awful lot like blaming the victim of police brutality for being attacked. And I'm very interested to hear whether this outlook has changed over the course of the last 22 days, particularly given the footage is available showing the police firing first, and that to the best of my knowledge, all charges against protesters arrested have been dropped."
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes.
The commentary, I believe where I said there were bad apples in the community also was, I'm not sure that may have been qualified with the exception of the June 1st incident. I believe I said it before that incident, but regardless, my reference and context was to those people who would use a protest, a valid, appropriate, orderly protest to disrupt and engage in behavior that is irrelevant to the organized protest or even an impromptu protest. That's who I was referring to. People that would disrupt a peaceful, lawful, organized protest.
So put into context, it's not that it was a negative comment on the protesters, but individuals who may have not been involved in the peaceful intent of the protest.
That's correct. It had absolutely nothing to do with individuals who may have been involved in the June 1st skirmish or that believe that they were victimized, or it has nothing to do with them.
Okay.
It had to do with the individuals who were involved with property damage, disruption, throwing items at people, police officers, as well as other civilians.
Okay.
Those people who were not there for the purpose of the protest, but rather there to engage in behavior that was disruptive there too.
Sure. Okay, next question.
Next question. Okay, so section 662.02 states the board members may not be included in consideration of complaints in which they hold bias against a particular party that is sufficient to impair the members' impartiality. I have to question why the board includes former LEPs when their background clearly points to an inherent bias, which should not be ignored. I'm sorry. In the conversations going forward, this will be a growing issue for the CPRB, and we as the community need to have trust in the fairness of the board. If an applicant requires less than 3 months of training to become a police officer, it stands reason that we can find community members who understand law enforcement to an equivalent level without the issue of prior employment by the body they are mandated to investigate. To my point, Ms. McClellan has stated in this meeting her bias toward using the CPRB as news agency for the police department, to the exception of community actors and change makers. I am aware that this may be outside the purview of the board itself.
Well, this is a comment that I think is really unfair to the members of the board who are former law enforcement officers. They bring valued skills, information, and understanding of the process to the table. And in all of my years in working with the law enforcement members, I have not observed bias, but I have appreciated the perspective that they bring to the table on some of the issues. So I really don't think that Ms. McClellan's comments tonight were biased. Thomas? You need to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Our charter also clearly specifies that we have 2 board members, but not more than 2 that have law enforcement backgrounds. And so that is the way the board was created. I want to second your comments. The members of our board, including Ms. McClellan, bring so much. And one of the things that we really have working for us is that we're a very diverse board, and we bring different perspectives, different ideas, and we're all willing to bring those and put them out on the table. And that leads to the kind of dialogue and discussion that helps us make change. I do believe that we do have to be very careful about anything we say, and can it be understood as suggesting a bias. But no, every board member we have right now is a very valued person who I believe works very, very hard to be an important part of this board and act without bias.
Mr. Green.
I want to, first of all, thank all of our guests this evening, all of those who are viewing the meeting, and all of you who are commenting. Please understand that in our live meetings over the years, our typical meeting may have four guests attending, maybe.
Maybe.
We've had more people not only tune in, but engage with us this evening than, well, I don't know when I've seen this much engagement from the public. So the first thing I want to say is thank you for showing up. Thank you for engaging with us. The second thing I want to say is please come back. Please get better acquainted with us. Let's all get to know each other better. I think I think that that as you see more of us working, some of your concerns, I'm not saying all of them necessarily, but some of your concerns may be assuaged. And even if not, then I think it's safe to say on behalf of the board that we invite you to continue expressing those concerns.
Sure.
Because we are your board.
Right.
And
Mr. Green has said everything I was going to say, so I'm not going to repeat what he has said, but we make every effort to come to you. We move around the city so that you can get to us because we're in the community, and we feel we're committed to making sure that we don't stay downtown in the city county building without you having access to us. So please do refer to our website, Facebook, if we get back on Twitter for our meetings. Come to our meetings. We want to see you. We would love to have you. So wherever we are, make sure you come and join us. Dr. Gershio.
I just want to reiterate what you said, that we would love to see people. As Mr. Green said, we might see 3 or 4 at a meeting, but that's not many. And then I have to agree that the 2 police representatives on the board here are nothing but pure professionals and very experienced and very knowledgeable people. And I'm proud to work with them.
Thank you. Okay, in the interest of time, are there any other questions that are long-standing? Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
There's 3 more questions, and April wanted to make a comment. Okay, so There's a question why why the densest group. The founders of it have military backgrounds. We need to demilitarize the police.
I think the reason why we have been looking at the densest group is because of their history, because of their skill sets, because of their ability to deliver a report with integrity that we can consider and look at for the recommendations that we want to make to the mayor. They have a history that we feel will produce the kind of report that we feel is necessary at this time. Any other comments from any other board members? Okay, next question.
How do you enforce, and there's some wording missing, but I'm assuming this is what they're trying to say. How do you enforce the law against police who break it? The blue wall of silence is strong, and who do you go to who's over them?
Well, I'm going to ask for some comments from the board on that one.
And to say that's why we exist. I mean, there's an issue, you bring it to us. But that's my only comment there.
Yes, Ms. McClellan.
I would like to address this as past law enforcement. There is not a single good officer out there that likes the bad officers or will protect them to any great length. We do not have the power to press criminal charges. That's the district attorney. And as far as the wall of silence, we do have subpoena powers. We have a very good working relationship with the current chief of police and with OMI, who does investigations also.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will allow 1 minute for comment from the one individual who's requesting to have the floor.
That April? April, I think that's you.
Is she on? You're muted. Stephanie, you're muted.
Sorry. She's logged on twice, so I have to try to see which one is her.
Okay. April, oh, okay. Yeah, I see she is logged on twice. Yes, April, you have 1 minute, April.
Okay, oh, darn it. Let me see.
Oh, okay, you must have two devices and they are giving us feedback.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to turn off one of your devices.
All right, let me try to do this.
Can also type your comment if you want me to read it.
And Madam Chair, while we're waiting for April, a person did ask very early in the meeting a question. I answered just to let that person know that we would get to Q&A at the end of the meeting. And I'm going to suggest that we simply make sure that that individual's question is recorded in our minutes. It's unclear whether the answer I gave was sufficient or if he needed more information. But my suggestion is that we just make sure that it get included in the minutes.
Okay, we will make sure of that.
Questions.
Okay. April, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I just wanted to say I greatly appreciate all the recent protests that have brought a lot of problems to light and have led to potential reform with the police. However, I am a little confused. As far as the October 2018 Copies Bar incident, is there any update on the city or the police handing over the information you requested in the subpoena last fall? And that would have included OMI report, police statements, etc. Of course, I am referring to the incident at Copies Bar in October of 2019, where drunk undercover officers brandished guns, started a fight, brutally assaulted people who were there, filed false police reports, arrested the victims, never got their blood alcohol level taken by their superiors, destroyed what they thought was the only copy of the bar's video, did not have any charges pressed against them, kept their jobs, were reassigned without any explanation from the city as to why, despite the district attorney announcing that those officers involved would not be allowed to testify in court because they're known to be untrustworthy, with one of the cops and his wife suing the victims because he hurt his hand while punching the man at least 19 times in the face while he was pinned down and immobilized, and because his reputation was damaged. And now, after 16 years of having the Pittsburgh police cooperate with subpoenas from the Police Citizens Review Board, they've not responded with what you requested last fall. I am asking that you please not let this be swept under the rug. Thank you.
I can assure you that we are not, but let's have some comments from Ms. Pittenger.
Certainly. That subpoena is still open. You had anticipated setting a hearing date, but COVID interrupted. And we're still, we still have an open subpoena. Mr. Ward has been working with the city law department to try to get this resolved without having to go to court, or potentially being able to go forward without some of the material that we had subpoenaed. There is a lawsuit, as our speaker noted, and there is information that we're able to get from those filings in the federal court that help inform some of what we were hoping to learn from the documents that we requested or subpoenaed from OMI. So right now, the hold is an open subpoena that we haven't resolved yet with the city. But you could go forward and set a date as well. We can, you know, the speaker is correct. You had egregious demonstration of conduct that was certainly less than becoming, and a real fiasco. And it certainly merits your public attention through a public hearing.
Okay. But April, we want to thank you for keeping us on our toes regarding that issue. We certainly don't want you to think that we're not staying on top of it. It's just because of some delays that were unavoidable, but we really appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Was there one other one?
There was one other question, and it's from a, I don't know if he wants to talk or if he wants me to read it. It's not in the Q&A. I don't see it in there. So I'm waiting for him to respond. If he wants to talk or if he wants me to read it. He says it's sitting in the Q&A, but I don't see it in there. There was only.
Or do I?
And I
Oh, for Joshua?
Yes.
You can't find him?
I'm chatting with him. The question.
Looking answered.
Okay. He just sent it out. Why is the CPRB's Facebook account reposting suspect photos and public relation pieces on behalf of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police? It is my understanding that the CPRB's sole mandate is to investigate police misconduct. How can CPRB possibly maintain impartially while working with the Pittsburgh police to investigate private citizens? I believe such conduct is completely inappropriate for what is supposed to be an independent police accountability agency. Thank you.
I think this question relates to some of the discussion we had around Mr. Waters' motion. And I think we covered it pretty comprehensively at that point. But Joshua, my recommendation to you, if you still are seeking additional information, please contact Ms. Pittenger tomorrow and we can continue that discussion. Is there anything else we need to cover tonight? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Green, Ms. McClellan seconds. Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, again, I just want to emphasize that our next meeting is July 28th, and please watch our Facebook page, our website, to know whether it's a Zoom or not. I'm anticipating it probably will be Zoom, but we really want to see you again in July. I want to thank my board tonight. I want to thank Mr. Ward, who we couldn't see tonight, for all that you're doing for the board and all that you're doing to make sure that we carry out our responsibilities. So I really appreciate that. And if there is nothing else, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Someone
Stay
has
safe,
one more
everyone.
comment.
Oh,
What was it, Stephanie?
Somebody had one more comment. I'm trying to see. They said they had one more thing.
I think you adjourned the meeting, didn't you?
Yeah, I did adjourn the meeting.
Okay, sorry.
Whoever had the other comment, we will look at it and we'll reach out to you.
Yes.
Okay? But we don't want you to think that, we didn't get to you. It's just that we didn't get the comment in time before the meeting was adjourned. Okay, thank everyone and be safe. Take
Safe.
care. Thank you.